Speaking of orcas, we got the orca on mic today. He did his presser at the Memorial, and it wouldn't be a podcast, Mark, if we didn't talk about Liv and if we didn't talk about the Ryder Cup. In this scenario, though, they intersect. So let me give you a little bit of background. As had been reported, I guess about a week ago, maybe a little bit longer. I don't even know what day it is anymore. Luke Donald informed Sergio Garcia that he had, quote, no chance of making the 2023 European Ryder Cup team, and Sergio had resigned his DP World Tour membership. So this has obviously been making the rounds. I believe, Josh, do we have Rambo here?
John, last week Sergio said that he clearly will not be on the Ryder Cup team. Luke had told him he wouldn't be. He specifically mentioned the fact that he would be missing playing with you, and was disappointed by that. What's your thoughts about Sergio not being on the team?
I'm going to miss him. We had a great partnership at Whistling Straits. And I'm going to mention history again one more time. You know, a Spanish duo in the Ryder Cup, I think to me is embedded into the roots of the Ryder Cup. With Sevio and Ali were able to do throughout their partnership, right? So it's a little sad to me that politics have gotten in the way of such a beautiful event. Again, it's the best Europeans against the best Americans, period. And whatever is going on, who's playing live and who's not playing live, to me shouldn't matter. It's whoever's best suited to represent the European side. And I have a hard time to believe that the best player Europe has ever had, the most successful player Europe has had on the Ryder Cup, isn't fit to be on the team, right? So it's unfortunate. I will miss him. But with that said, I want to be hopeful. It's a couple of Spanish guys playing really good right now, so hopefully they can join me on the team.
The best Americans versus the best Europeans, and Mark is already who is that? Jon Rahm?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, look at that.
Oh, I thought it was him.
On the beard inspiration.
Do you know who that actually is, Mark?
That's DJ Khaled. Come on, I'm not that beyond it.
Another one.
Yeah, let's go golfing.
What do you think? What do you think about old Rambo's thoughts here?
A couple things. I'm not so sure Sergio would make the team right now the way he's playing. With respect, look, he's got a tremendous record, but I wouldn't say he's past his sell-by. But he's going to have to start showing a whole bunch of form. And look, it might be political, but these guys knew what they were signing up for. They knew the rules. They knew the rules of engagement. When remember, Luke Donald wasn't the Ryder Cup captain for this go-around until Henrik Stenson decided, no, I'm going for the money at Liv. And he signed the contract, and the DP World Tour was like, sorry, mate, this was the rules of how this thing's working. So, look, is it sad not to see Sergio? Sure. Were the rules stated? Absolutely. And from what I'm led to believe, talking to folks last week, Sergio called up Luke Donald to get a feel for the situation, to say, hey, big guy, am I going to make your team? Because if so, I'm not going to resign my DP World Tour membership. And Luke's like, not happening. So he goes, well, okay, then I'm out. So I think the whole thing sort of smacks of two sides to every story, you know. And I respect John for his opinions, but I think they're far more capable young European players right now. And in the area where the team currently is, I think it might be a good idea to blood some of these and kind of get them some exposure and some experience for Ryder Cups to come.
Let me just throw out here, KP, a couple of the names that are likely to be on the European Ryder Cup team and then maybe on the bubble. So Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Victor Hovland, obviously, Terrell Hatton, Matt Fitzpatrick, there's 5. They do their points a little bit differently, but right now Victor Perez would be on the team. And then the notables, quote, on the bubble would be Adrian Meronk, Yannick Paul, Tommy Fleetwood, Justin Rose. So these are the types of names that are being considered for this team when we get to Italy in September.
Yeah, so I was actually, before this, I was on like an hour and a half Ryder Cup pod with No Line Up. So I've been
stuff from you.
I've been deep in the weeds here. Listen, like I understand where Rahm is coming from, right? Because he only cares about winning the Ryder Cup and playing with his friend. And they were awesome at Whistling Straits. They were awesome. Like they were so good. And it was super fun. And they were a great pairing. And Rahm really loves like the history of it. And so I understand why he's saying what he's saying. But it's not. I would love for somebody to explain to me how this is political. It's a business model that the European Tour has to protect, right? Like, I think what everybody and people in the comments are talking about this, like what everybody's missing here is the European Tour is only solvent because of the Ryder Cup. Like that's how they fund their entire business. If the Ryder Cup goes away, then the European Tour goes away. Like they don't have any money to continue on. They don't make money on everything else that they do, on all the events that they host for the 3 years in between hosting Ryder Cups. And so their only leverage that the European Tour has is protecting the Ryder Cup. And so if they start going down this path where they're like, oh yeah, you can play anywhere in the world, and also like you don't have to be a European Tour member to be to play in the Ryder Cup, then it's a complete mess. Like it completely undermines the business model that they have working. And I think that's what everybody's sort of missing. And he shouldn't care about business models and care about like what the European Tour has to do to be solvent, but it does matter. And I think everybody's kind of missing that when we talk about when we have this conversation.
So KP, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. My light just turned off. If the European Tour is so dependent on Ryder Cup money, wouldn't it behoove them to have the Ryder Cup be as competitive as possible, as frequently as possible, and the best chance of being competitive, as we see in everything from high school baseball to the upper echelon of golf, being able to select from a pool of everyone is better than being able to select from a smaller pool if you're trying to put together the most competitive team.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think to counter that, like you're giving up this one Sergio Ryder Cup appearance, right? Like that's what they're sort of kicking away. Nobody else at Live is good enough to make the Ryder Cup team. Maybe Thomas Peters, but that's it. Westwood's not good enough. Poulter's past playing in Ryder Cups. It's really just this one Sergio year, and you're basically leveraging what you have with the Ryder Cup to keep future players on the European Tour. Right, because if you let Sergio play as a non-Ryder Cup member or as a non-European Tour member, then anybody that's coming up in Europe, your future Tommy Fleetwoods, your future Tyrrell Hattons, your future Shane Lowrys, they can just go to Live and still come play in the Ryder Cup. So maybe I said that backwards earlier, and I probably did, but you're completely undermining your entire business because you're the one running both the Tour and the Ryder Cup.
Mark, we would love to hear what you had to say, but you are on mute.
I knew I was going to do it. Forgive me. No, I just wanted to say, I was just kind of pointing at Carl going, well, that is well put together. Because if it is the case, look, I think the European Tour, I think this is not based on fact or anything, it's just gut feel. I think the European Tour is, of the tours, the one probably the most in the crosshairs of Live, just because Live is becoming increasingly more global. And it's a enterprising entity to European Tour stars. And so if you let guys just go and then come back and play Ryder Cups and stuff, as Kyle points out, they're going to go. And so I think in terms of protecting its selection of players, whatever you want to call it, I think the move is appropriate.
There is an awkward position to be in, Patrick, if you're the European Tour, because of you already have players who are trying to exit your tour to get to the PGA Tour, and you have players that are trying to exit your tour to go to Live. Yes, I guess you would end up becoming even more reliant on the Ryder Cup because your weekly European Tour stuff for 3 years would be worse.
And I think a big thing here that we haven't said is Luke Donald is open to picking Live players. He said it before the PGA Championship. Someone asked him, what should Zach do with Brooks and DJ? And he was like, Zach needs to do whatever is best for him. And remember, I have the opportunity too, because the only people who've resigned from the DP World Tour and given up the opportunity to play the Ryder Cup is Westwood, Bland, Poulter, Stenson, Sergio. So if he wanted to, he could pick a Thomas Peters. He could pick a Paul Casey if, they're flashing form on live towards that time period. So there's still an opportunity there for these guys to, maybe play their way onto the European Ryder Cup team if Luke Donald deems, they're playing well enough.
You see, I find that curious, and that's a really good take there because, again, what we were led to believe was that Sergio called up Luke and said, "What's the chances?" And Luke said, "Well, not so much." And then Sergio proceeded to then go ahead and resign from the tour. So unless I'm missing something, which is likely, I find the whole thing kind of weird right now. I really do.
Yeah.
Right. So Sergio is just kind of taking like Luke Donald's word. What are the benefits to Sergio resigning his DP World Tour membership?
I think he doesn't. He doesn't get fined anymore. They were previously getting fined,
and he was the only guy who didn't pay his $100,000 fine, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so.
Correct.
At last,
because the guy who won, the Spanish guy who won last week, Larthabal, is that how you pronounce his name?
That's correct.
Yeah, he played in the first Live London event, and he possibly could play his way onto the European Ryder Cup team. Like that's one of the guys Jon Rahm was referencing when he just spoke.
The European Tour is in such a weird spot, right? Because they don't really have they're stuck between the PGA Tour and Live, and they're the only organization of the three that has equity in the Ryder Cup. And so it's just this really weird middle ground space that nobody else is in and nobody else has to make decisions on. And think about what they've done over the last 15 years of lowering the requirement, the number of European Tour events that you had to play to be basically the Rory rule of you only have to play 6 and then you only have to play 4. I think that's where it's at right now, where you only have to play 4 European Tour events to maintain your membership. And so they've kind of done for PGA Tour guys what they won't do for Live guys. And so you're like, well, that feels hypocritical, but also Live is kind of trying to put a nail in their coffin as a business. And the Ryder Cup is the one piece of leverage that they have over all of these entities. The whole thing is just, it really shines a light, Rick, on something that we've talked about for years, which is this idea that there's so many different powerful entities running different parts of golf. It's very different than the NFL, where it's just the NFL, or the NBA, where it's just the NBA. You've got 4, 5, 6, 7 different entities all wrapped up in all these different events and business models, and to kind of tease them apart is very difficult.
Yeah, obviously all with different interests and things that they have to consider makes it certainly a little bit messy. And then nobody realizes that there's all those different entities and makes it even more difficult.